What's up, everybody, guys? Players Cup 4 is coming up next weekend, and I want to do another Beat Them All series for some cores that have been popping up. But guys, I've already done a Beat Them All for Series 7, which is effectively the same meta game. So I really recommend that you guys go check out that video. It's going to help you in Players Cup 4 and any tournament, any ladder thing that you play in. We go over Torkoal Venusaur, Dragapult Colossal, Regidrago, you name it. I'm not going to remake the video just to kind of, farm views, farm clicks. That's not really my MO. But in today's video, I'm going to be going over some very popular cores that are coming. They're rising up right now. They weren't in that previous video because, plain and simple, metas change, and we've got about 5 or 6 cores that we need to address in our team building for Players Cup if we want to do well on the ladder or even in the Players Cup tournament. That is the main focus. So guys, without further ado, let's get into it. So guys, these are the cores that I want to talk about in this video. We're going to be going from the top to the bottom. First one's going to be Life Orb Regieleki. Then we've got Surging Strikes or Rapid Strike Urshifu. Regidrago is actually picking up a little bit, and it's actually pretty scary. Assault Vest Celesteela, and then Registeel Iron Defense stuff is what we're going to be covering. So let's get into Regieleki first. So guys, one of the biggest threats currently right now has been this Life Orb Regieleki. It just won the Smogon tournament being used by Eakes is his name, and honestly, he kind of just dominated a lot of the meta with just this huge burst of damage Regieleki. And next to Clefairy is its most common kind of partner for this offensive Regieleki. It gets bulked up with the Friend Guard, one of the best abilities ever, pretty much. And so you can invest into more bulk with Regieleki, like this spread I have here. You're still doing a ton of damage, being modest, Life Orb, Transistor. And you actually don't need that much speed because the only thing that outspeeds this Regieleki is pretty much max speed Regieleki, and we don't really care about that. We're going to max strike, and we're going to max lightning. Another big thing, guys, is Rising Voltage actually has a max electric move of 140 base damage. So that's more than like Thunderbolt. It's on par with things like Thunder, which is pretty crazy. I don't know if it was like an oversight, but it's pretty wild because you hit with a massive max move, and then after your max is over, if electric terrain is still up, your rising voltages are going to hit extremely hard then after. So this is a very big threat that we need to address in our team building coming up for Players Cup. Luckily, Regieleki is not undefeatable. Even with this moveset, it does have max strike, but sometimes that's not going to be enough to blast through Pokemon such as Garchomp and Landorus T. Okay, these are very obvious. These, I would say, are probably the 2 best bulky ground types in the format. Bulky to an extent, but they hit extremely hard. They can max quake up your special defense. They can very easily kind of weather the storm of the Regieleki. They're bulky enough to take the max strike if you Dynamax. They are literally immune to the electric moves, and they can really get your team into a good position with things like Airstream, things like Max Quake's boost. They can both Swords Dance. They can both force the Regieleki to switch out. So I think it's no surprise that these big, bulky ground types are very important for dealing with Regieleki. And another thing that Regieleki really struggles with, Clefairy's trying to help it when this happens. That's why Clefairy is so good. But getting Trick Room up is amazing versus Regieleki. This is one of the best things. It's obviously a little bit, easier said than done, you could say, but I honestly think that this is Regieleki's, Achilles heel, pretty much, if you could say. I feel like when you get up Trick Room, Regieleki turns into practically a useless Pokemon. So, getting Trick Room up with things like Porygon 2, Incineroar, Grimmsnarl, these bulky cores, you're going to take a ton of damage, right? Like, you're going to Light Screen, get up the Trick Room, or maybe try to fake out the Clav. They're probably just going to Helping Hand and blow you up, but sometimes you even have to sacrifice a Mon to deal with Regieleki, which is really brutal, but it's not too bad. It's really not too bad. It's something you kind of have to deal with pretty much, right? But so getting up Trick Room is a really great way to deal with Regieleki. Obviously, I would say screens / max quake. I kind of talked about this in the Garchomp Laner's T type thing, but being able to get up these max quake boosts, even onto your partner, you know, you like, let's say you lead Garchomp or Laner's, you protect your partner, you max quake, and then you guys are both at +1. Now your partner might be bulky enough to survive the Regieleki, where Garchomp and Laner's already aren't threatened by the Regieleki, and you're already burning these max turns really, really well off the Regieleki. And then screens. Things like Grimmsnarl, I think Grimmsnarl is pretty much the numero uno screens setter. There are a few more every once in a while, but getting the screens up can really help weather the storm against the Regieleki for sure. The other thing I kind of wanted to talk about was being able to force a KO into either Regieleki or Clefairy. I think there are a few Pokemon that can actually manage this. I think big ones are Metagross, AV Metagross to be exact. AV Metagross is actually picking up a lot right now. I used it in my Players Cup run back in Series 7, and I had a lot of success with it. I think it's really, really strong. I think Regieleki might actually be able to live the max quake with the Friend Guard boost, but of course you have a partner who can, you know, maybe do a little bit more chip damage, all that kind of stuff. But if they don't play properly, AV Metagross is going to be able to tank these things, Dynamaxed of course, and is going to be able to knock out the Clefairy. So your opponent's going to have to make that 50-50. Do I protect Clefairy or not? You want to put the Regieleki Clefairy player into a harsh position. You want to force them to make these 50-50 decisions because otherwise they just get to do whatever they want safely. So AV Metagross is actually able to threaten the Steel Spike KO and the Max Quake boost onto the Regieleki. I usually try not to recommend specific Pokemon just because it's way easier to implement, you know, a Max Quake or a Screens or a ground type as a whole to counter Regieleki. I want the information in these videos to be as easily addable to your team as possible, right? But I do have to talk about a few very standout Pokemon, which are Rillaboom. I think Rillaboom fits on any team pretty much, right? Grassy Surge gets rid of Electric Train. Priority Grassy Glide is going to hit both of these Pokemon. Rillaboom can even taunt the Clefairy. If you're a Assault Vest Rillaboom, you're going to be bulky enough to survive the Max Electrics from the Regieleki, stuff like that. Rillaboom, its whole kit, Fake Out, Grassy Surge, Grassy Glide, Grass typing is very, very good against Regieleki. And then another one that I actually think is very good too is Dragapult. Dragapult is actually immune to the speed drop of Electro Web and Max Strike. It can't even get hit by Max Strike, so it can only get hit by the Max Electric, which it resists. And Dragapult can then Max Airstream, Max Phantasm to drop defenses, you name it. I actually think Dragapult is one of the best Pokemon against Regieleki as well. So I would say that all of these are great answers to Regieleki and Clef. So Rapid Strike Urshifu has actually been picking up a lot lately. We pretty much only saw this Pokemon on Colossal teams. And as you can see, the example core that I have right here is Urshifu Rapid Strike with Sash, some form of Rillaboom with Grassy Glide and Fake Out, and then Incineroar with Fake Out. Pretty much why this core is so good is because Urshifu destroys the fire types in the meta. It really, really does. People just saw it as this Colossal answer. They thought that Urshifu Dark was the #1, and he still is insanely broken. But Urshifu Rapid Strike is super good into things like Rotom Heat. You come in and just punch Rotom Heat's lights out. Incineroar, you punch Incineroar to death with the 3 hits of water critical hits. These are things that the Urshifu Dark Pokemon cannot do. Just because the Dark move is resisted into Incineroar, and then close combat, you're intimidated, you don't crit, it's not enough to kill. Urshifu Water is picking up, and it is extremely, extremely good. And I kind of want to talk about some common answers to it. And then I guess I could talk about the core a little bit more. The reason why Rillaboom and Incineroar, this is also on Coal teams, but also on Standard teams, why it works so well is because Fake Out forces your opponent to not move, which means you can Surging Strike. They're forced to protect, and you Surging Strike. There has always been an inherent synergy between like these forceful high damage moves or big threatening moves and Fake Out. Fake Out and hitting through Protect is an insane combination. Something that I could compare this to in the past was big things like Fake Out and Encore on things like Liepard or with Encore Whimsicott. Because your opponent has to Fake Out to not like die or, you know, get killed or whatever, and then you encore their protect. I think it's almost a similar range. You fake out, you hit through the protect, and you hit through protect. You hit them again no matter what with Surging Strike. So fake out and Fire, Water, Grass core, these Pokemon synergize really, really well together. One thing that counters Urshifu Water very well, and this is also for Urshifu Dark, but it is priority moves of your own. So the thing about the priority moves is like, Urshifu only has Aqua Jet, which is a lot weaker than the Sucker Punch from Urshifu Dark. So if you can force Urshifu into these like tough situations where you have priority moves and they're kind of forced to Aqua Jet, stuff like that, I think you're in a good spot. So I would say things like Sylveon Hyper Voice into Quick Attack. This is something I talked about in my video. I think one of my previous videos where I talked about some underrated mons. I think Sylveon's actually a really good anti-meta pick right now. But something like that, for example. I think Rillaboom very obviously is extremely strong into this as well because of the Grassy Glide. And I think that these are just pretty basic, and then just anything with Fake Out forces it to protect. You hit it through protect, speed control, yada, yada, yada. So I think that these are all really good against Urshifu Water. Going off of like Aqua Jet being, forcing it to Aqua Jet, I say you put yourself in a pretty good position. I would say that speed control and max airstreams are actually extremely good here. Max airstream hits it for super effective. And then here's a big thing that it's obvious, but you might have overlooked it, is that Urshifu Water is not a dark type like Urshifu Dark, which means you can hit it with things such as Prankster Scary Face from Grimmsnarl and Thundurus, Prankster Thunderwave from things like Grimmsnarl and Thundurus, and just Prankster affects it in general. Even Prankster Will-O-Wisp maybe from like Sableye, stuff like that. But is not immune to Prankster, which pretty much means in turn Grimmsnarl and Thundurus actually have a really strong matchup into Urshifu as well. And then, like we just said right there, Airstream. So I would say things like Dragapult, Airstream, Celesteela, Airstream. Just because Urshifu actually does have problems with these Steel types, are neutral to fighting moves. Just because the Surging Strike's water move, it hits hard, but it doesn't hit like insanely hard. Like Wicked Blow from Urshifu Dark is just strong enough to kind of like negate type charts in some ways, but Urshifu kind of needs to hit the super effective move for it to really do that much damage, and it does have problems with the bulky steals, such as Celesteela and Metagross. Celesteela and Metagross can really just do exactly what they want to do against Urshifu Water, and that's unfortunate for him. So, specific Pokemon now at the bottom, I think Tapu Fini. This is extremely obvious. A big reason why Tapu Fini is one of the best Pokemon in the game. It resists both stabs and Okos with Moonblast. It's just a very basic, complete, and utter counter to Urshifu Water. Another one is Rillaboom. The thing is Urshifu can never really safely close combat you, and the combination of close combat and Aqua Jet is never going to kill Urshifu. You've got Fake Out forcing KOs, Fake Out forces Protect, and Protect, and Grassy Glide beats out Aqua Jet. Yeah, I'd say this is a pretty obvious one, but definitely works. I mean, Rillaboom and Tapu Fini are two mons that go on pretty much any team, and that's why they work so well. And then someone in the chat brought up Regieleki. Obviously, Regieleki can like Oko Urshifu easily, but it only brings it to Sash, and then you're gonna die back to Surging Strike. So it is useful, but it's not like a super hard counter #1 answer. You kind of have to trade. You're gonna die to Surging Strike's Aqua Jet almost every time, but Rillaboom will win the 1v1. Tapu Fini will win the 1v1, and it forces it to just be in a horrible position. So I think that these are really good counters to Urshifu. One last Pokemon I want to mention is kind of just Torkoal Venusaur, Sun. Obviously an insanely strong core, and Venusaur resists both fighting and water, takes no damage, kills the Urshifu through Focus Sash with the G-Max Vine Lash, brings it to 1 HP, dies to the Vine Lash. And Torkoal doesn't take much damage at all in the Sun. You can hit back with a Yawn, you can hit back with a Body Press, these kinds of things, and you're pretty much facilitating the rest of your team with the Sun and being bulky and helping out Venusaur and stuff. So Torkoal Venusaur is actually a really hard counter into Urshifu Water. The strengths of Regidrago, insane spread damage. Able to completely sweep teams under the right conditions. And then I want to say this, surprisingly decent Dynamax. And the reason I say that is because Regidrago actually gets extremely bulky with 200 base HP when it Dynamaxes, and then maybe it can only click max Wormwind. Obviously, that's horrible into fairy types, but you're probably not bringing Regidrago into a lot of fairy types. But against teams, you are just increasing your bulk by dropping the max Wormwind, lowering their attack, and then you are just doing insane damage off of the Dragon's Maw max dragon moves, similar to Regieleki. So, Regidrago is very, very scary, and its max moves are extremely strong coming off of Dragon Energy as well. So, a surprisingly good Dynamax. Regidrago is almost always supported by things such as Prankster, Whimsicott, and Prankster Tornadus, with the help of things like Helping Hand from Whimsicott and all that good stuff. Regidrago is a hyper offense mon, sometimes with a choice Scarf instead of being supported by Whimsicott and Tornadus, but it is a big damage sweeper, and it is on these normal hyper offensive kind of sets. So keeping that in mind, I think it is very, very obvious that fairy types, literally every single one of them, the fairy types just completely and utterly decimate Regidrago. They are immune. I think the most popular ones, obviously, are things like Togekiss. Tapu Fini sets up the Misty Terrain, weakens Dragon moves completely. But I don't know, maybe you build that perfect team and a fairy type just isn't like working out perfectly. I think if you play well, you protect your fairy type, Regidrago is not a problem at all. Regidrago feels godlike against teams with no fairy type, and it feels like shit against teams with fairy types or Tapu Fini. So it really is that polarizing. That's why I want to mention it, is just because if you guys aren't prepared for Regidrago, it can really, really mess you up. So yeah, if you don't have the fairy type, how are we going to deal with Regidrago? Well, the thing is I would say screens. Priority screens. Being able to weather the kind of storm of the hyper offense is going to really help you. If you can light screen with Grimmsnarl and then set up the Trick Room with your Porygon 2. Or Grimmsnarl is a fairy type too, actually. I didn't even... it's very obvious, but it's true. Grimmsnarl is extremely, extremely good into Regidrago. So, yeah, you could lead Grimmsnarl. You can fake out Trick Room with Porygon 2. You could... you know, light screen Trick Room if you know they don't have taunt, especially in an open team sheet format. So priority screens, Grimmsnarl is phenomenal. Bulky Trick Roomers such as Porygon 2, Dusclops, these kinds of things. You gotta have Trick Room. Regidrago is not in its element. It's, you know, very slow, and it's gonna just get clapped. I mean, it's slow. It's the slowest thing on a Trick Room most likely when it wants to run minimum speed. So these are things that are easier said than done, but I kind of just want to bring awareness to make sure you kind of have a check for the Regidrago. I think Fake Out is actually extremely good into it. Fake Out because maybe it will Dynamax very, very rarely, but when it's not able to spam the Dragon Energy and you force a Dynamax out of Regidrago, it's actually pretty easy to deal with when it's single target Dragon moves. So Fake Out just synergizes very well against it because it doesn't want to Dynamax if it doesn't have to. So good stuff there. A lot of these things have been pretty obvious, but I kind of think just bringing up the bulky steals again. Metagross and Celesteela, I think, are phenomenal against Regidrago. They don't care about the attack boost. The attack drop because of Wormwind. Metagross is immune. Celesteela is almost always a special attacker. They both resist the moves. They can boost up their stats with Airstreams, Steel Spikes, Max Quakes, however they want. And they honestly don't take too much damage, and they really do mess with the Whimsicott and Tornadus and stuff like that. So, yeah, just be aware. Maybe get a bulky steal. Maybe get a fairy type on your team. And think about Regidrago. Don't let it surprise you and totally sweep your team in Players Cup. Next up, homies and homeettes, is the Assault Vest Celesteela that's been popping up. I once again talked about Celesteela in my underrated Pokemon video, but Celesteela is not underrated anymore. Its usage percentage is actually massive. I believe it's at like 17% last time I checked. Yep, 17.15. That's wild. That is extremely high usage. So Celesteela needs to be answered. I'm just gonna talk about a Assault Vest Celesteela here. I talk about Celesteela in a lot of different sets in my video. You can check it out if you want. But I think Assault Vest is the most common, popular set on Celesteela for sure. And I think it's the one that requires the most answers. I think when you run things like Life Orb or Power Herb, Celesteela's kind of checkmatey feeling to it is kind of removed because you're going to die to things like Regieleki. You're going to die to things like the big fire types, Heatran popping up, more special attacking fire types are really going to deal with Celesteela a lot easier. But with the Assault Vest, you make it that much harder to deal with Celesteela. Celesteela is so strong because of insane bulk, beast boost, sweep potential, extremely beneficial max moves, Steel Spike, Airstream, Rockfall, Max Flare. Finally, a checkmate like typing for certain teams. So what do I mean by that? If Celesteela gets into a perfect position, if you can knock out your opponent's electric types, fire types, the things that deal with Celesteela, your opponent just can't touch Celesteela and just literally lose to Celesteela. It's that simple. That's how Celesteela kind of made its mark in VGC, Leech Seed leftovers, walling out teams. But now we can just wall them out by maxing, boosting up our stats, getting a billion stats, and then sweeping the team. That's really how it feels sometimes. So yeah, that's why we've got to deal with Celesteela really badly. And so I think I want to start off by saying, very obviously, fire and electric types. Keep them alive at all costs. Use to pin Celly. Pretty much, your opponent is going to be looking for their opportunity to take out your fire and electric types. Regieleki, Incineroar, Rotom Heat, these kinds of Pokemon. These are what Celesteela's team is aiming to take out. So if you can save them, get them into a good position, the opponent's Celesteela is actually not going to feel very strong. Now, these are obvious things. Celesteela is really at its strongest when it's Dynamax. It's fine. It's okay outside of its max. I'm talking about like an opponent, a different teammate Dynamaxing. So Celesteela, after it gets all its boost, not Dynamax, is amazing. It's a primary Dynamax target for your opponent. And when it's not Dynamax, it's really not that good. Like Meteor Beam, let's just talk about that. It has the ability to hit things like Rotom Heat, like Incineroar, super effectively, but it's gonna have to Dynamax to pull off this Meteor Beam. Those are things that you can abuse. You get that one good switch into a resisted hit, and then they pretty much waste their Dynamax, and then they can't hit the Rotom Heat. They can't hit the Incineroar very hard at all when the Dynamax is over. So that's why these pretty obvious defensive options, things like Snarl, I'll even say Spectrier, Incineroar, Parting Shot, Light Screen, Grim. These kinds of bulking up things for your team really shut down Celesteela because they're going to max. They're going to try and get that KO. If they fail to get that KO because of Snarl, Party Shot, Light Screen, their Dynamax is going to slowly tick away. They're not going to get those beast boosts, and then you're going to be able to deal with it with those answers that we just talked about, the fire and electric types. Another really obvious one, it goes into the same one too, but it is Porygon 2 Eerie Impulse. Pretty much, Porygon 2 can do whatever it wants to do in front of Celesteela. It wants to Trick Room. It wants to not Trick Room. It wants to spam Tri-Attack. It wants to Eerie Impulse. Celesteela does not threaten it at all. And Porygon 2 can really shut it down with things like Eerie Impulse. So that's a great one as well. Funnily enough, Celesteela has big problems with bulky steals just like itself. Opposing Celesteela and Metagross. Now, I mean, yeah, you have Max Flare on Celesteela, but this is not going to do a whole lot to an opponent's Metagross. It's really not. And then you're probably just going to activate their weakness policy and either let them start sweeping you, or they're going to be AV Metagross and they're going to be destroying your partner and stuff like that while you're just taking like 3 turns to kill with Max Flares. That's really how it feels sometimes. So, funnily enough, the bulky steals kind of counter the bulky steal herself. But let me talk about the teammates. I actually forgot to talk about the teammates here. The reason why I put them here, this is not a team. These are each individual Pokemon that just work well on Celestial teams. Grimmsnarl. Screens bulk up the Celesteela even more, make it that much harder to kill, and then fake tears to force KOs. You get the fake tears kill, you get the beast boost, and now you're gaming, pretty much. So Grimmsnarl is very common on all these Celesteela teams. I would say Rillaboom is extremely good with things like Fake Out and Grassy Glide. Just because one of Celesteela's biggest weaknesses is Regieleki, Rillaboom's not really going to help too much against those fire types, but it's going to make the Regieleki matchup that much easier. Fake Out the Regieleki, Grassy Glide the Regieleki to kill it, protecting Celesteela, all that kind of stuff. They synergize very, very well together. And Celesteela actually has trouble dealing with bulky waters. Just like a Tapu Fini sitting there Calm Minding, taking these hits, actually does pretty well, but Rillaboom is going to dispose of that Fini and not let it get those Calm Minds up. And then another one is Clef. Friend Guard, amazing on the Celesteela. Helping Hand, follow me. It's kind of like, you know, that Regieleki we looked at earlier where Clefairy helps the bulk and helps the damage, similar to what Grimmsnarl does. Really basic stuff in Pokemon, but these are great partners for Celesteela. Last and certainly not least, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be talking about Registeel and kind of just iron defense Pokemon in general, but I think Registeel is kind of the premier iron defensor as of right now. It has clear body, so it cannot have its defense boost lowered by things like Max Phantasm. It can't be, you know, chipped into range by things like Max Darkness and then get a cheeky KO. You can't even lower its speed, so you can't make it faster. You can't make it slower than things like Glastrier, Torkoal, that kind of stuff. Clear body iron defense is very scary. And then the thing it has over things like Ferrothorn is it's not quad weak to fire. Ferrothorn, you get it into the position, you get your fire type in, and you can almost close out the game sometimes just because of that. But Registeel is actually so bulky, it's going to take that fire move, it's going to body press your Incineroar back, whoever, and they're probably just going to Oko them if you have a boost or two up. And yeah, so Registeel, those are its benefits. It's a lot bulkier, plain steel typing is harder to abuse, and clear body is a great ability. But it does have some exploitable weaknesses. So I guess let me write down its strengths here. That's a scary thing, guys. Registeel can run Amnesia and Iron Defense. Can get both of its stats into just sky-high levels. You can't kill it. But if they are running that set with Amnesia, then they probably only have Body Press, which means a Ghost type is going to be able to just totally wall Registeel. Taunt. Okay, let's talk about Taunt first. So let's talk about just good taunters. You know, things like Incineroar, things like Rillaboom, things like Grimmsnarl. Taunt just shuts down Registeel from getting up iron defenses, from protecting to get leftovers recovery, and even stopping Amnesia, stuff like that. So when Registeel is taunted, it's really not doing a lot. It sits there and body presses, and you do have to, you know, respect the damage that it puts out, but it's not doing its #1 threatening thing it wants to do. Get him up, get up the body, the iron defenses, excuse me, and then just start killing everything. So Taunt is very, very nice. Another one, Knockoff. Okay, that is a big weakness that Registeel has that Ferrothorn does not. Ferrothorn can Leech Seed, non-grass types of course, and get this big healing into itself. Registeel is very position based. It can't heal itself besides leftovers and protecting. That's it. And if you can knock off those leftovers, its health pool can never go back up. Like every single chip move you do will eventually kill it. So if you can knock off the leftovers, you're in an amazing position. Haze. Okay, so Haze obviously is just a direct hard counter. Haze is a great move. It's just been kind of fallen to the wayside, I guess. People haven't been using it as much just because Dusclops has taken a backseat with all these dark types, Spectrier, Urshifu Dark, Dragapult, just being able to clap him. Things like Dusclops, things like Tapu Fini with Haze, for example, very, very good. And then, yeah, I think Calm Mind Fini, if they are not the Amnesia route, is extremely good because you don't take that much from body presses. You get up a few Calm Minds, and then you can take out the Registeel with like 3 or 4 Muddy Waters. So, resist, body press, boosts up, and KOs. That's another pretty obvious one, but very, very good as well. And then Ghost types. Now, Ghost types, completely immune to body press. Can be a checkmate win con / timer win con. Obviously, a timer win con is not what you want to aim for, but it is something you can do if you're able to get the Registeel into a certain position. Things like Spectrier, stuff like that. Dragapult can just become unhittable, and then you can bring the game to time, which is tough, which is very, very tough. But these are all very good things. There are a few good nasty plotters that I think can set up, take a body press or two, and then just Oko the Registeel, or at least do a ton of damage to it. I think Galarian Moltres is actually extremely good. Moltres, Galar. This is Rotom Heat. Rotom Heat gets up 1, maybe 2 is even kind of pushing it. Nasty Plot Overheat / Flare is just gonna totally erase the Registeel. But look at that. Landorus and Regieleki are 2 great mons to deal with those 2 mons. So you can see why this combination has been coming up so much. So that explains why. You're gonna have to deal with all 3 of these if you want to deal with Registeel. So guys, that's going to do it for my mini beat them all here in Series 9. Once again, I already did a huge beat them all for like 15 different combinations, team compositions, excuse me, for Series 7. So please check that video out. I didn't want to make a whole new video again because we are unfortunately repeating a series, but these are some cores popping up, and I want to help everybody succeed in Players Cup, and even vocalizing these things helps myself out too. So guys, please come and hang out on the Twitch channel. You can see the homies are here right now. Actually, I stream 5 days a week, VGC content and other fun stuff. And yeah, I really hope that this video helps you guys succeed in the Players Cup. So guys, make sure to sub, drop a comment down below. I'd love that. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace, everybody.